We are quickly approaching the premiere of American Horror Story 1984, which means we all need to brush up on the slasher genre. Ryan Murphy and crew will definitely drop a ton of cool references and Easter eggs in the upcoming season. Don't worry, we got you covered, as this video will dive into the essential slasher movies you need to watch before the new season kicks off. Let us know your recommendations in the comments below.
This is God.
John Carpenter's legendary 1978 classic Halloween has been credited as the film that started the modern slasher genre. American Horror Story has drawn heavy inspiration from the original Halloween in past seasons, but it's even more obvious in 1984 as a serial killer named Mr. Jingles escapes the confines of a mental institute. This scene shares a number of parallels with Halloween, including both killers breaking out on a dark, stormy night and a man who explains what happened to Mr. Jingles. He's damn near identical to Dr. Samuel Loomis. Fun fact, the Loomis name is a nod to the character Sam Loomis in Hitchcock's Psycho. This film also marked the debut of Jamie Lee Curtis, who recently worked with Murphy in Scream Queens. We're crossing our fingers that we at least get one JLC cameo this season. Please.
I'll set the machine to slasher movie, and we'll leave it at that.
Based on what we know of AHS 1984, the premise is a group of friends head to a summer camp where they'll be terrorized by an escaped murderer who previously attacked the camp. This, of course, is inspired by the 1980s classic Friday the 13th. Before we even saw a single frame from the season, the showrunners already referenced Friday the 13th in a bunch of teasers, including one where a woman was murdered on the lake. Look familiar to anyone? There isn't much more to say about this one because we're pretty confident that you've watched this film. We would recommend watching as many of the early Friday chapters if you can, but if you can only watch one from the franchise, we'd recommend the fourth, the final chapter. Speaking of which, the final chapter was released in, yep, you guessed it, 1984. In the fourth and final chapter, yes, this was meant to truly be the final film in the franchise. No marketing ploy, the producers wanted to put Jason Voorhees out to pasture. The film kicks off with Jason brought to the morgue, presumed dead, only to revive, escape, and continue his killing spree at Camp Crystal Lake.
Where is she, and why can't I find her?
Go get her!
There's some great stuff in this film. We get the Jason hockey mask refined look that everyone would come to love. Corey Feldman has a wonderful performance, and of course, Crispin Glover does this. Our fingers are crossed that we get some good 80s dancing this season. There's likely a section of horror fans that have undoubtedly spotted more similarities between AHS 1984 and Sleepaway Camp than there probably are for Friday the 13th. Originally released as Nightmare Vacation overseas, Sleepaway Camp has become a cult classic for its clever use of the slasher tropes, adding a whodunit element, and delivering a great twist ending in the early years of the subgenre. Without giving anything away, especially that ending, we would recommend watching Friday the 13th right before you hit play on Sleepaway Camp. A perfect double feature as you prepare for AHS. Let's leave the summer camp and head out into the creepy fields, filled with cannibals. Halloween isn't the only horror classic that came out way before the slasher genre really took off in the mid-80s. In fact, before we got the shape in Carpenter's film, Tobe Hooper and crew gave us one of the most iconic villains of all time, Leatherface. The character was loosely inspired by the serial killer Ed Gein. Side note, Gein died in 1984. Texas Chainsaw Massacre tells the story of a group of friends who go out to investigate reports of suspected grave robbing, you know, like you do, and fall victim to a family of cannibals one by one, you know, like you do. This film is credited with originating several elements common in the slasher genre: power tools as murder weapons, hulking faceless figures, and the killing of victims one by one. While a few elements from the film have shown up in prior seasons, such as Roanoke, it's not entirely clear in what ways the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's influence will be felt this season. But we can't imagine Murphy not using any fun nods from this classic film. But please, no nail guns this season, guys. We're still traumatized from the nail gun scene in Cult. Even with AHS 1984 taking place in, well, 1984, we still believe the 1996 classic Scream is absolutely essential viewing for the new season of American Horror Story. It's a game changer.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
The film propelled new life into the slasher genre that desperately needed a fresh take. With the amount of camp that we've seen in recent AHS seasons, it wouldn't be shocking to see a self-aware meta tone in this slasher send-up. Now, you've likely seen Scream a million times and will likely watch it a million more times, but may we suggest you watch the highly underrated Scream 4. You'll see quite a few familiar faces in this chapter, including AHS veteran Emma Roberts. Scream wasn't the only self-referential slasher film that had a hand in revitalizing the subgenre in the late 90s. We can't forget the Jennifer Love Hewitt classic.
Yo, I gotta have sex tonight.
No, not that movie. Yeah, that one. Now, this season of AHS will likely pay close attention to the films rooted in the 80s, but it is hard to ignore Cody Fern and friends accidentally running down a man with their car and bringing him to Camp Redwood. And spoiler alert, he won't be happy when he wakes up. From what we saw in the trailer, Fern's character even attempts to cover up the truth as well. We have a feeling that this is as far as the references to I Know What You Did Last Summer go, but who knows.
Invades the privacy of innocent people till the piercing eyes of his camera meet the terrified eyes of his victims.
"1984 was a crazy year for horror fans. While Friday the 13th, the final chapter, was closing up shop on the Jason Voorhees character, Wes Craven introduced the world to arguably the greatest horror villain of all time, Freddy Krueger. With the majority of slasher villains portrayed as big, hulking, faceless killers, Krueger's appearance and persona turned the trope on its head. The concept, the clothing, and Robert Englund's performance turned the Krueger character into an instant icon. Taking the unknowing victims out of the summer camp small town setting and dropping them into a dream realm allowed Craven and crew an incredible amount of freedom for creative kills throughout the franchise. While we didn't notice any major Elm Street nods in the 1984 trailer, we can't imagine this season is not filled to the brim with references to the Craven classic. With that said, we are extremely excited to see what and how Murphy taps into the supernatural elements that the Elm Street franchise is known for. Here's a thought: what if Brooke is just in a big nightmare? Yeah, probably not. Speaking of Nightmare on Elm Street, if you're a big fan of the franchise, you're not gonna miss this. Coming soon to the channel, our new show True Fiction will be investigating the unexplained chain of deaths that inspired the film. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let us know what movies you'll be watching to prepare for 1984 in the comment section down below. And until next time, bye-bye.